And for what it's worth, I myself haven't read this either, so I'm working right alongside with you. And what our task is we're going to sort of like revert, we're going to sort of talk it out paragraph by paragraph. So I don't know if you can see my zooming, but the moment I only have the first paragraph zoomed in on my screen. So take 3 or 4 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes to read the prompt. And what I want, actually, let me do it a different way. Sorry, that's not, sorry. Let's do it a slightly different way. Okay, I'm going to put up on the screen first the questions that come at the end. And so start by taking 2 or 3 minutes to get a sense of what I'm going to ask you about and how the weighting is going to work. That's going to inform and encourage, I'm trying to model how I would encourage you to approach the actual exam, of course. And the idea here is you should know which questions matter, which facts matter, and which questions get the most weighting. So let's take 3 or 4 minutes to read through each of these questions and get our bearings on where the points sit and how we should spend our time. So after working through these questions, what strategies or observations do you have? If this is what, if you sat down, you've got a 4-hour time clock ticking and you read this, what are some things you might take away from this about how you organize your time or what your strategy is going to be? Any thoughts on that?
Well, question C is worth the most points. And then F and E.
Good, absolutely. You would have known this if this was the exam. You just got the shell of your real exam. But even as I look at this, I was startled to see the point disparity. That is a huge amount of points. If you think about it, that's more than the 70 points, and the common law question is only 60 points. So there's a huge weighting on this exam. So let's think about how one takes an exam. You start an exam, you're super high energy, you're super amped, you're ready to go. You've got the most fresh and the most motivated. If I were you, I would, as Elizabeth was gesturing to, I would consider starting with one of these the 70-point question, or maybe even the 60-point question. That, even the 60-point question is almost 3 times these other small questions. So you're going to be freshest and the most likely to do really solid work on those questions. And more importantly, if you have any possibility that you could mismanage your time on the exam or run out of time or have to rush through something, rushing through property distribution is going to be a lot harder than rushing through some other issues on the exam. So we might have a good reason to start with that. But now let's go back. And so I do recommend that you start by checking that out. You already know the point value, but just stop and take a quick look and see, you just highlight the one word custody support visitation, or highlight the names of the people you're going to represent. Are you representing the same clients every time, or does it switch? Do you represent one spouse in one question, one spouse in the other? But I do think you'll read the exam better if you know at the outset what questions you're being asked. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go through and really tether. We're going to go through sort of paragraph by paragraph, look at the facts and see what the facts, where the facts would go in our answers. So let's take 3 or 4 minutes to read just paragraph 1. And when we're done, I'm going to ask for you to talk through what these facts tell you and where they would go. So why don't we get a volunteer to just jump in and pick something in this paragraph. What is this fact telling you? And if you're curious, what I'm sort of doing is I wrote out my A, B, C, D, E, F, and I'm sort of tucking facts in as I go, things that I don't want to forget, things that are going to be important, because it's not sequentially ordered. It's not like I give you the facts for question A in paragraph 1. So someone jump in. What facts do you see here, and how would you use them in the exam? What am I testing you on? Who wants to start us off?
I'll go. So one thing that came out to me, or 2 things kind of. So Mallory's 13, so that's a good age as far as like giving her own wishes in terms of custody or whatever hasn't come up, but I see like a foreshadowing. And so she's at a good age to have her own wishes. And then also they're 20 minutes away, so like there's some question there as to, is there a potential modification that might want to come up? And with that, once there's an order in, it's not as easy to modify it if there's like no reason, or we're gonna look at different standards for that. So those are some facts that come out.
Great, awesome. And what else jump in? What else did you guys see here? All right, give me some guidance here for the other 5 of you. What's going on? Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
No, I just have a quick question. Yeah. My Blackboard is having some intermittent signal issues, and I was wondering if this document is on that we could pull up so that I can just have it in Word.
Yes, absolutely. I think I can.
Sorry to completely pivot. That's why I didn't it.
No, that's great. That's exactly what I'm checking in on. Let me send it to you right now.
Hello.
Just give me 1 second. I'm going to send it to all of you at the same time.
Hello.
Okay, so I just sent it. I apologize for the lack of pleasantries, but just sent it to you all, and it's posted on the class site as well. Okay, but what other facts do you guys see in here? Feel free to jump in the chat. Oh, thanks for clarifying, Juanita, as well. Same issue. What else do you guys see here? Like, I can talk it through, but I don't think that's super helpful. At least not in a live session. So what else do you guys see in paragraph 1? Okay, I'm not really sure.
I'm still having signal issues, but I think that the jurisdictional issue with the state of Brandeis is something to keep in mind.
Good, so we've got cross-jurisdictional move. We already know that there's going to be a question to try to modify this visitation, and so that's going to trigger a question under the UCC JEA, which you're just studying recently, as to where we might have to move to modify this existing order. So we're going to flag that. It's going to be an important subpart of our visitation question. Great. What else? Beth or Ellen, what do you guys see?
It might be a stretch because I've only read the first paragraph, but maybe just throwing it out there that the rights of Billy as like a step parent, maybe? I don't know. I'm kind of like struggling to find something.
Oh, possibly, but we already saw the question, right? So we know what the questions are. The questions are about grounds for divorce, visitation, property, prenup, support, and custody. What about all this stuff about these other awards? So he already owes, John already owes maintenance to Selena, and he also owes child support. What does that matter? Why is that relevant for us?
If he got remarried, would that stop? Oh, wait, no, I guess that's reversed. Never mind.
No, good. It's a good point, though. It would not stop. And it's durational maintenance anyway, so it wouldn't have mattered. But these are exactly what I'm trying to get at that I want to issue spot. So it wouldn't stop, but what is it relevant for? It's not super obvious, but I want to make sure we see it. I'm not moving on until we see it. So he has 2 existing obligations for support.
Would that take, he would subtract that from any possible future obligations?
Yes, for obligations for what?
For child support.
Perfect. Good. That's a huge point. And the reason I want to mention it is because look how much space there is between that and when you actually get to the question on child support. Your question on child support is your second to last question. There's a lot of text between there. And if we don't flag it now, if we don't see it, it is going to screw up dramatically your child support calculation. So I want to make sure you see that. Why am I telling you about a prior support order that John's paying to someone who is not currently married, not currently subject of litigation? It's going to fundamentally alter your calculation on child support. So if I were you, I would start with a big open page. I would put each of the questions down and I would start to tuck facts as you see them in there that are critical facts that you can't miss. So those are 2 critical facts, both of which are going to change. They're going to create this Cinderellian question. We're assuming John and Billy have a child that come out of this marriage is going to create a huge issue, a reduction in the total award. Okay, good. Let's take a look at the second. We're getting rolling. Everyone's starting to understand what we're doing here. So take a look at only the second paragraph next. And your task again is to extract from that and sort of bucket what you see under the questions that you're going to be asked. What are these facts? Why do they matter? And how are they going to affect your analysis? Paragraph 2.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yes.
But that spousal support, it says it was only for 3 years, right?
Yep.
So would that have been 2007?
Oh, good question. So we'll have to, because it's 2015 taking this exam. Good point. So we'll have to look and see. You're right. It's actually a red herring for us because it's suggesting that the 2 numbers are not equal, that the child support is a great catch. So the child support order still continues, whereas the maintenance order is likely suspended. And it leads us to believe that that's why we care. But actually, when we get to the second paragraph, we see that the reason we have that fact is for something totally different. It's a pivot to tell us that why he would want a prenup and why he's so upset about the prospect of paying maintenance. Good. So let's take a look at paragraph 2. Okay, we need to start us off. What do you see?
Well, the fact that Billy signed the prenup really without any warning or opportunity to consult a lawyer is sort of a red flag.
Right. And if we were taking careful notes when we read the first time, ideally you would have already written down Shanks. Brandeis applies the rule in re Shanks to the validity. And if you had written that down, then when you see these facts, your question is already starting. You've already pushed out the ALI rule. You've already pushed out the Simeon rule. And now you know that you're going to apply a rule that does look for procedural fairness and looks for substantive fairness at the moment of execution. And so good. So the fact that it's under this sort of late, last minute situation is going to set up a really strong argument that this doesn't pass the procedural fairness review that is required of Shanks. Great. Let's hear what else is in this paragraph. There's a lot packed in here. Brian, go ahead.
Looking at the that he was gifted his grandmother's home, Billy, while she was in the nursing home, and she died. That would be, in my mind, the bequeathment exemption that was in the Kentucky statute that you could lease out into separate property.
Good, perfect. So she died in 2014 and they got married in 2013. So it would have been marital property except for this exemption. So if you've got like a blank sheet and you're starting to fill things out, even though you wouldn't write it up so conclusory, we already know that eventually this property is going to end up in Billy's separate property bucket. Great, Elizabeth, next point.
Sorry. It talks about his job and him being economically self-sufficient. In Kentucky, they look for, I'm not sure of the jurisdiction, but they're looking for a need-based lens, right? So if he's able to support himself, then he may not need support.
Good. So that fact might be relevant to his Luther Award for spousal support. What else might that fact be relevant to? Because it sounds like it's previewing what he had versus what he might have now.
Did you call me?
Yeah.
It said that at that time, when it said at that time, it made me think that maybe something's going to happen that he ends up not being self-supporting. but that's just me.
Yeah,
But
no,
I wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, let me just follow that point up and then I'll get to your question. Good. So that might be relevant because under the prenup, if something changes later under thanks, we don't care as long as it was fair at that moment. But this is exactly the reason why I'm going through the exam in this kind of quirky way is because I want you to liberate yourself away from seeing $45,000 a year. That must be the child support income. It might be, and I would note it there as well because that very well might be what we use it for, but it might be relevant to the prenup and it might be relevant to spousal support as well. If that were one of our questions. So we need to go ahead with your question.
Well, I did not understand how you knew we were going to use Shanks.
Oh, great question. Very simply because of the prompt. So under subpart D in the question. So you won't know until you get to the exam which of these three you're being tested on, but there it was. So that might help you because as you're reading it, you can push out those other two. And I think that's the only big jurisdictional split still open. The Parentage Act would have been open, but I closed that out last week and told you guys you're under the original UPA. Good. Let's take a look at the third paragraph now. You're getting the hang of this and see what you see here.
Those are 300,000 years old. 15,000.
Great. Dimitri kicks us off in the comments and he said, this is all property distribution. And that's exactly right. Usually most of the exams, it's kind of hard to smatter property distribution around. Usually you'll see your huge paragraph where all of this stuff is planted. Now let's go through this one ever so slightly differently. And if you're in a position, if you can't, it's fine. But if you're in a position where you can text or type, not text, but type in the message board, let's go through one at a time. You can send it to me individually just so that I won't respond, but just so that you don't give away the answers. But what I'd love to do to have is the accountability of you confirming that you know where the stuff is going to go. So let's take it item by item. And if you're in a position to type, if not, don't worry about it. Stay on and listen to whatever extent you're able to. These are off hours, participate to whatever extent you can. But questions. When they married, John owned a condominium in New York City that was worth $300,000. In the chat to me, tell me why does that matter and who's it's going to be and under what statutory conclusion. So you would want conclusion, the statutory basis for knowing it. Good. And everyone's doing it shorthand and you're doing it perfectly. I've gotten answers from almost everyone and they're perfect. For the exam, just tighten it up to make sure you pull everything together. And so, for example, I would want it to clarify, when they married, he owns this condominium. So this is under the timing exception. Anything that precedes the marriage is separate property. So just make sure you tether it to how you know what you know. So everyone has the answer right. But what I don't want you to do, the best exam answers are ones that will itemize and analyze. And the mediocre middle of the road exams are one that just list and say, here's John's property, but don't explain why. Good. Next one, send me again a message. He also owned a Nissan Maxima valued at $15,000. Who is it and why? I'm sorry, let's read the next paragraph too. He later traded it for a Nissan Pathfinder for $30,000 in 2014. The remaining loan that's on the Pathfinder is in Billy and John's name jointly. So take a minute. It'll take a couple of sentences to tease that out, but tease that out in a note to me if you're able to. Okay, great. Everyone has it exactly. Good. So the $15,000 value of the Nissan Maxima can get traced out of the current value of the $30,000 Pathfinder. And of the so he traces out 15. The remaining 15 is in a loan, and that is joint marital property because it's taken out during the marriage. It just so happens that it's also in both of their names, but we actually don't care about that at all. So if you ever see me telling you the title or the name of who holds something, that probably doesn't matter unless it's separate property anyway. Good. Let's do a couple more. The next one, John had a bank account with $55,000 in it when they married. It presently has $110,000. Let's just to keep us moving efficiently. Let's not focus on writing up the A answer on this one. Just tell me who gets it and why. Good. So here, what you would want to do, anytime you see something with appreciation, I encourage you to treat it as if it's two separate entries for your exam answer purposes. So first, the bank account, the $55,000 is unequivocally John's because of the timing rule. Because it was his separately at the time that they married, he retains it as its separate property. The appreciation, so the additional $55,000 growth here, because we see no other facts just yet, seems to be passive appreciation, meaning no one did anything to make it happen. It just sat there and earned money and appreciated, in which case it would stay as John's. If, however, there was some sort of active appreciation, we might have an argument that that has become marital property. But at the moment, we don't see anything like that. Great. Next section. Billy drove a Honda Civic worth $7,000 when they married. It was totaled in a car accident a few months after he and John married. He bought a new Ford Focus for $20,000 using the $2,000 insurance check from his Civic as the down payment and taking out a loan in his name for the remainders. This is probably the last thing we're going to do on equitable distribution, so crush it. Just drop me a quick.
Using 2000.
Okay, great. I apologize for all the typos in my response, but I'm trying to give you guys as much individualized feedback as I can. Great. So the A answer here, again, would give the right conclusion. It would tether the statutory basis to prove instead of just conclude how you know why it is. So here, the $7,000 number is totally irrelevant. It means nothing. The $2,000 insurance check, because the Civic was his separate property owned before marriage, the $2,000 insurance check can be traced back out using the tracing exception combined with the initial timing, and we'll pull $2,000 out of the Ford Focus. Now we know that there's a loan for the remainder. You do need to clarify that the remainder of 2,000 minus 20,000 is 18,000. Be sure to do that simple math. So there's $18,000 loan, not a $20,000 loan. And it says that the loan is in Billy's name, and a great answer will explicitly say that that is irrelevant, that here, because it was acquired during marriage, it is marital property. Great. So I hope you get a sense from that. That's a lot of your equitable distribution work. And if that equitable distribution analysis is worth 70 points, and that's all there is, there may be a few more dribbles coming up to add in there, but if that's really all that is, you need to be excellent. That would mean that you have a ton of time to work on it. It would mean you have like 40 minutes to work on it. It would mean you should write out a really thoughtful rule that explains, and eventually, of course, we're only doing this quick issue spotting, and we're doing a classification exercise. The next things that we would need to do would be to total up Billy's bucket, total up John's bucket, and then through those contribution factors. And we don't yet have facts that show contribution. So we certainly couldn't have written our answer based on this, but for issue spotting purposes, we can be really confident that we're off to a good start on that 70-point question. Great job, everyone. Okay, next, let's look at the next paragraph that begins after they married, John worried. Okay, so someone jump in and walk us through what do you see here? What facts are relevant and how do we tether them to the questions you're being asked? Brian, go ahead.
I noticed that Billy was making $45,000 and then he quit to stick it to the man and let him live in $18,000. And so for child support, he's like voluntarily abdicating his income capacity, and he's operating a lot below his income capacity, which would be a consideration of the court.
Good, huge. So under child support, one of the things you might be starting to take away that while there was a clear, honking red light paragraph on equitable distribution, for child support, it's equally important and equally complex, but it's a little more subtle and a little more buried. So here, we want to be extracting these facts as we go. So it's an imputed income issue on child support. It might also be relevant to that earlier point under the Shanks rule that even if things might have seemed pretty fair for him to give up his right to spousal support back at the time, the night of the marriage, because things seemed pretty equal and he was pretty well able to provide for himself. Here, if for some reason he's going to be unable to provide for himself by the time we get to the end of this exam, if he's not there already, it doesn't matter under the Shanks rule. So you can see that these facts are going to sit in multiple homes. Good. What else in this paragraph? How else did those same facts, before we even move to other facts, how did those same facts go to property distribution? Mary Beth?
Are you talking about like the debt that he had? The student loan debt? Or would that not really, is that just like a red herring?
It could too, but so we'll come back to that in a second. But just at the moment, just the part that Brian mentioned, the $45,000 quit reduced down to $18,000. How might that matter for property distribution purposes? Juanita?
Well, he may be eligible for more marital property since his circumstance is not as good as John's financially.
Good. So there's actually two totally extreme ways to use this fact. So one fact is when we get to our contribution factors, we're going to look at the economic positions of the two parties. And if it that he is less well off.
Well, he electively took the pay decrease. So he was making $45,000. Even if he kept that job, he probably could have argued, I'm still not as well off as John. But I feel like the court would look negatively on that.
Good. And what one word would be used to package up everything you just said? Anyone in the chat bar?
Yeah, no idea.
What does that go to? the primary lens that we're following for the distribution of the marital bucket is contribution theory. And so taking everything Mary Beth said, we could package that up on the other hand to say he actually contributed less to the marriage by choice. He was a drain on the marriage and he chose to contribute less to the marriage. So therefore, he shouldn't be able to get this greater pour of the marital bucket. Next, let's go to the fact that Mary Beth had taken us to this point that he incurred $8,500 in student loan debts, which he still holds today. Mary Beth, where does that go? What section of our exam answer?
I would kind of put it up with the paragraph above that, like all of that information. So when you're doing your analysis and everything like that, I would kind of include that with that instead of putting it with if that makes sense.
Good, perfect. I'm a jerk is what you're very not so much saying, but I'm saying I'm a jerk, right? Like that in there is jerky because it's leading you to miss it. But that's $8,500 in debts that go into our equitable distribution analysis. And he did he acquire this during the marriage?
No.
No, I think it's before.
It said he graduated before they got married.
Okay, so that's separate property, and that $8,500 goes in his bucket, and that's going to further reinforce the point Juanita had made, which is that his bucket isn't looking so good, and he's going to argue for more. Okay, last paragraph, and then we move to the last page of this exam. Sorry, Mary Beth, did you have a question?
Just to clarify, I have my chart of like who has what in each bucket. So just as of right now, the marital property or like is the $15,000 loan.
And what about that? Yes, because at the moment we don't even have a house just yet.
Right.
Yep, that's exactly right. Okay, let's take a look at the next paragraph. Good, so this paragraph is a tricky one. Let me just flip to the next page just to see the ending of it. I hope I give you guys enough time. Let's look at the end of this paragraph. Okay, so this paragraph, crossing over on these two pages, I think is actually probably one of the harder paragraphs because it's going to require you to separate out child support facts and equitable distribution facts. Are all four of you, I think I drove away two people and I'm feeling really shitty about this, but the four of you who are left, I'm so sorry. Are you guys in a position to write something up, and are you finding it helpful to write stuff up, or are you finding it annoying and you prefer to just talk it out? Well, let's just talk it out, I think. Okay. Let's go through. I'm reluctant to lead you though, because I want to make sure we get this right. So let's talk this through. Take a minute to at least sketch it out for yourself. Don't have to type anything up to me, but just sketch it out for yourself. What is going where? And so that you have a good sense. So let's go through individually. The first thing we learn is that he's got these degrees, and he works presently making $105,000 a year with additional bonuses of $50,000. What is that relevant to? Everybody together, unmuted, all of us.
Contribute.
Child support.
Yeah, child support.
Child support. Good. And so make sure you're super careful because we've been on a little bit of a roll with lots of stuff relating to equitable distribution, but this is actually child support. He has a huge income, but Brian's also right. Brian, what he was starting to say was contribution, and that's also relevant. So the trick is that the 150 a year doesn't go for any distribution. Well, what Brian was also saying is also spot on, that under contribution theory, we now see the disparity. If one of those factors is economic earning power of the two spouses, we now see that John is coming out of the marriage way better economically than Billy is. And we also see under contribution that means John is contributing much more to the marital, the marriage itself financially. Good. But for the purposes of what to do with the specific number, the 150 is going to go into your 45-point child support question. Good. Next, we learned that John has unvested stock options that he acquired while married. Today, they're worth nothing, but they could be worth $200,000. I'm not going to stop and spend a lot of time on that unless you guys have questions, but that's going to lead you to uncertainty in what? Is this property distribution or child support? Everybody together?
I feel like that'd be property.
Good. It would be property distribution. And if we think about the 4 steps of property distribution, there are 4 steps. The first, identifying property. Second, valuing it. Of all of the points that we have on this equitable distribution question, this is the only item on our list that's going to allow us to look at steps 1 and 2. So your write-up on this would have to be very different. You'd have to say, we go looking at the Bender case, the firefighter pension case. This might be the only case you talk about on the whole client counseling exam. The unvested options are property first. Second, the valuation is a harder question because it could be worth, let's flip to the page, it could be worth as much as $200,000, but it could be worth nothing, or it could be worth a fraction of the $200,000, and it's a long ways off. So that would be a chance to say it is property. For the purposes here, we would have 2 options to distribute it today and have them cash it out, but that's not very likely because the resources are probably not going to be there. Or you could divide it now, so attach a 50% or a 25%. You get that much of whatever X it's worth, and then you would get the quadro, and you go to court, and you'd have an official domestic relations order so that whenever we know what it's worth later, you'd be able to cash it out. Okay, next part. When married, they bought the condo. He sold his condo, bought a $500,000 home. The remaining mortgage. I'm going to skip that one. We did a really good job on that, but you would do the tracing back out. The title's not going to matter. It doesn't matter who it's titled in. Mary Beth has a question. She said, so the unvested stock would be a weak client counseling route. That's exactly right, because you would have to clarify, you have to clarify that this is not a classification issue. It's definitely marital property. It is a valuation issue. And then you have to counsel about those different strategies. That's a great spot where client counseling points would be super important. Okay, so now we're going to know how that is 70 points, that property distribution question. Okay, next, let's take a look. We've got just 3 paragraphs left. So let's take a look at this next paragraph, the one in November of 2014. They adopt a child. Okay, so someone jump in. Let's else come down. We've done the hard stuff. We're probably done with math. I don't see any numbers coming up. That Brian, are you? Oh, no. So someone walk us through this paragraph. What does it tell us, and how would we use it, Brian, if you're willing?
Yeah. They're co-parenting a 3-year-old, and she has a health condition, which means that that's going to be a factor in child support, and we're going to consider the cost of that in weighing child support.
Try that one word. So what part of the child support decision?
Either exemptions or additional amount. That's not a word, but
deviations. You got it. No,
yeah.
Good. So that's going to be a discretionary argument. And that's going to be important. It's probably not going to be factored in. We're going to have to make that discretionary argument for it. Good. And then what else do we see? What do those other facts tell us? How would we use these other facts? Good. So Brian chimes in the chat. So race cannot be a factor in considering the best interest of the child. That's the Palmore case. And the idea here is that we can't say, well, the kid's Korean, John's Korean, therefore the kid, it's in the best interest of the child to go there. But it could be a factor under adjustments to community if you can talk about it in other ways. So you could talk potentially about language acquisition. You could talk about the culture and tradition pieces of it, but you can't make a decision simply based on race. But that's going to be one factor. But John is certainly going to try to tell a story about the importance here. And then the fact that this extensive care is going to be required. Good, perfect. So Mary Beth says in the chat that this is a lot of time. Someone's gonna have to care for her extensively. And now our bartender might actually be looking pretty good, right? Because he might have more liberated schedule to be doing the kind of care potentially that's needed, or we might need to hire more extensive care and we might need to factor that into our deviation. All right, 2 paragraphs. We're working so hard, you guys. I know that everyone's cursing me. This is so not fun, but I hope when this is over, you feel better about how to work through these questions. We're doing this without notes. We're doing this without outlines, and you're doing a really great job. So it's just a matter of being careful and organized and structured in how you work through your exam question. All right, next paragraph in January 2015. So everyone in the chat bar, tell me which question this is going to go to. What issue, what analysis is this leading you to for your exam? Good, perfect. This was the tiny question. Remember, it's only worth 20 points. That's small potatoes. And if when we look at it this way, you can see why it's worth 20 points. I didn't just pull that number out of the sky. It's 1 paragraph of text, which means you're talking no more than 2 or 3 paragraphs of your answer to state the rules and apply it. This is going to be a quick, easy question. But I hope you can take away a really powerful point from this review, which is that when you start an exam and you're amped and you're ready to go, if you started with this 20-point question, my worry for you all is that you crush your 20-point question, but you go over time and you burn up a lot of energy on a silly question where like the worst answer on this entire exam is going to be an 18-point answer, right? Like everyone's going to get this. It's not that hard. It's setting up a question of adultery, causing an end to a marriage, and a question of whether a single act of violence is enough. Those in the end, like the worst answer, maybe 17 points. But you're talking 2 or 3 points on the table, but that are going to spread between the best answer and the worst answer, or that sounds tricky, but my point is that if you burn up all that really precious, like that amped up energy on this question, you might actually take more time than you need, and you're not really going to see a great payoff for it. So if I were you, instead, if you started with that 70-point question with all that energy, and you give that really robust rule, and you do your client counseling on your unvested pension, and you walk through each, and you follow the methodologies, and you use your notes, and you use defined clear terms like the contribution, you're really going to see great payoffs, because the spread between the best equitable distribution answer and the worst equitable distribution answer is going to be more like 20 points. So it'll be a way bigger spread. There will be plenty of exams that just list a bunch of stuff and leave it for me and don't do the client counseling work. So if you instead had started with that, by the time you get to this, if you had to dump an answer on this and say adultery, causation, and you said 1 act of domestic violence isn't enough, and you wrote like 2 or 3 sketched out bullet points, you get pretty darn close to 20 points still. So you want to be really, really shrewd about how you answer this question. So that little paragraph is your entire question A. It deserves few points. There's no question they're going to get divorced. You would also mention, of course, the no fault ground rather, if for any reason it doesn't work. But this is a pretty straightforward section that everybody usually does really well on. All right, last paragraph, we're in the home stretch. So in the end, this paragraph is actually not really super dispositive. I would describe this as a directional paragraph telling you that when you get to this question subpart F, who wants what? And this is a kind of old exam. In one of my more recent exams, I'd be more likely to build out subpart F and put these facts. They'd be sitting like right here in the question, that this is what they want. So this paragraph isn't super instructive, other than telling you that the need that Billy is currently doing a lot of the watching in the afternoon, John in the evening, and you can work with that a little bit in client counseling. But just to recap, the key themes that I hope you took away from this are a sense that anytime you see a fact, try to squeeze it for as much as it's worth. Don't assume that a fact is just because it's income, it's just about child support. It also could be about contribution. It also could be about a prenup. The facts about about cheating might be relevant to child custody. It might be relevant for grounds for divorce. It might be relevant depending on the facts. It could be relevant to a permanent maintenance award if you're talking about someone who might remarry. There's all sorts of ways these facts could be relevant. But my suggestion for methodology for how to answer a question: read the questions first and sketch them out big picture. Support, custody, visitation, prenups. Read the exam question and start to make notes of facts that you don't want to miss. Tuck them in. Come up with a strategy about in order to answer it. And I would almost always answer it with a big dog question first, because you're much more likely to be fresh and savvy, and you're much more likely to be bulleting and rushed at the end. And then within each question, making sure that you think robustly about what other facts might be relevant. Question from Mary Beth: maintenance Billy wants would be impacted by his elective career change. Yes, that's exactly right. So the maintenance, that because he changed his career, he's probably, the question of whether he has a need or not. I don't think was there a maintenance question? I don't think there is a maintenance question in this particular one, but you're right that it would be relevant. It could be relevant to that maintenance claim, but I don't think we even had that in this particular exam. Other questions. I know this is exhausting and tedious, but there are like 3 or 4 at least other exams posted. There's a different exam that Dimitri, Juanita, and I went through a couple of weeks ago. And so after this session, I'm going to email this workup and the other workup out. And so if you didn't do that one, you can look at that. But more importantly, you're starting to see that every one of you is equally positioned to do well on this exam. The difference between the best family law answers and the middle of the road family law answers is not knowledge. It's not, lack of understanding. It's rigor and how to write this up in a client-centered, analytically rigorous way. So the B answer will just list the marital property of separate, and marital, make a quick argument and go. The A answer will go through each of those items and defend and explain how they came to be what they are. Brian, go ahead.
I was just wondering if there's any chance that you'll do a con law one of these in office hours, because that's like by far my weakest area. And I was just curious.
Absolutely. You have a prep. So 2 things. I could do it tomorrow after class while everybody's sort of live anyway. Let me know when you could come, because
that works for me. Yeah, but like whatever is good with everybody else.
Let's do that at the starting point. So we'll do like the 8:20 to 8:40. We did that once before, and I lied. That's the one that Dimitri, Juanita, and I did. Drew, I think, did together. Was a con law question that way. But let's do one tomorrow after class. The only complicating factor is we're going to do an end of class toast, and I'm bringing a bird in the shop, you guys. It's the only advantage of online learning is none of us are riding home from this. But it'll make a con law review question more fun and lively. So pour your drinks for tomorrow night. At 8:15 and then 8:40, I'll do a con law one right then. Go ahead, Dimitri. Any other questions? I am free all night. I'm happy to stay on and do a con law question now, but I think people are probably too tired to do it quite now. We can go over questions. We can go over client counseling tips. What else do we want to talk about? Anything else?
Dimitri posted in the
how does this change? Oh, great question. Dimitri, I'm glad you asked that. This is actually why I really encourage you to read the questions first, because you could easily imagine the minute you see at the beginning a couple, you're exactly right that under almost any other semester, that would have been leading you to a parentage question. Almost any other semester. It's kind of surprising that there wasn't a parentage question there. And so that's exactly what why it's helpful to read that prompt first, because then you can feel comfortable when I have that sentence where I say, Billy and John legally adopted the child, you can feel comfortable that at the end of the day, that's the end of it. If you would already feel confident and know that if you read the questions first. But to answer your question, if a donor was used, well, so here, if with the same-sex male couple, we would need a surrogate more than likely. So if they did it through some sort of a surrogate, then that would raise interesting questions, really interesting questions, because the neither parent is obviously a parent. So the woman, if we follow the traditional original UPA, the person in that situation who would be the parent, the mother would be the woman who birthed the child, and then the father would be the person standing by. So it would be extra complicated if you had a surrogate who was married, who out of altruistic reasons carried the genetic child of one of these 2 men, but neither of them would be presumptively parents under the original UPA, and that is a problem. So I'm going to switch it for a second to make it a little bit easier. If it was a same-sex female couple, you would know that the woman who birthed the child is the mother under the original UPA, and then the question would be, does the donor have a right to be the father, the sperm donor, or could the other non-biological mother be the parent because she was married to the woman who gave birth? And that's where you'd make arguments under that either the Bethany case or the KEM case. I think it was the last case that we brushed through last week. But you would try to argue that either under the holdout provision or under the marital presumption or under voluntary acknowledgement of paternity, that any one of those should be able to work in a modern context for a same-sex couple. Let me read Mary Beth's. Yeah, so there's some crazy factual scenarios. Cool. Yeah, there's some really complicated factual scenarios. Exactly. There's some really complicated factual scenarios to follow. For our purposes, to be super shrewd about exam readiness, you are working with a traditional, outdated Parentage Act, which is exactly what Kentucky uses, but it's traditional and it's outdated. So if you see any modern application, whoever is the non-biological parent is going to try, oops, my connection just got bad, I hope you can still hear me. Whoever is the non-biological parent is going to fight really hard to get a more modern read that the statute shouldn't be read in gendered terms, and whoever is the biological parent will fight really hard for the traditional read that says that the other person, who probably is of the same gender, cannot be a parent because of the traditional read of the statute. So the facts will be hard, but at the end of the day, the arguments, no matter what I gave you on parentage, would be the exact same. Whoever has the biological connection will stick with that traditional approach. Whoever is pushed out by the Parentage Act has to argue for a more liberalized read of the statute. Cool. Great question. Anita asks, the question she asks is, does the fact that LGBT is a protected class matter? Hugely interesting question. After the Supreme Court case this term, we didn't talk about it, which you'll not be tested on, but it's super interesting, that under Title VII, it will now allow claims on the basis of gender and sexual identity. But the big issue that it raises, and the issue that came up in the other justices' opinions, not the majority, is the question of, does that mean that LGBTQ people the classifications that treat LGBTQ people differently are subject to heightened scrutiny? But there's a big open question. So there's a lot of folks who would say probably yes, but there is not currently a U.S. Supreme Court case that says that, like sex and legitimacy, LGBTQ status is always going to get a heightened review status. It's coming. Brian's right. So the big issue coming out of this Bostick transgender case, the big issue coming out of it is, like, what does it mean going forward? Like, Justice Gorsuch was super textual and said that, like, the word sex is enough to get at gender identity and transgender discrimination. And so lots of folks would say from that therefore we're going to see it get a heightened scrutiny. But there's some old cases closer back during the marriage debates where some of those conservative justices would say that the rapid rise of the LGBT equality movement and the speed with which it progressed tell you that LGBTQ people, for the purposes of constitutional analysis, do not get heightened scrutiny. So it's actually going to be really interesting to see what will come of it. So, like, there were marriage cases that found that, like the Borkley Bashir, the Kentucky district level case, said LGBTQ people get intermediate scrutiny, but then it got overturned to the Sixth Circuit. So it's still an open question for our purposes. So if it came up in the exam, I would have to give you more clarity about what to do with that, because technically we didn't study it. But it's really interesting, and watch it super carefully, because this is probably going to be one of the most defining legal reforms to happen in your next years of law school. Okay, you guys worked really hard. I'm sweating. I don't know about you guys. We worked hard. You got a lot done. And I know that it's tedious. And I know it's not fun to sit through this. And it would have been easier if I just talked at you and told you how to answer an exam. Sadly, Brian, I already scarfed my dinner down, so now I'm just like sweating it back out. But you guys did exactly. I'll drink my next dinner. You guys did an awesome job with this, and I know it's tedious, but it is way better for you to work it through than for me to talk at you and for you to see where these trouble spots are. The one thing you have going for you on this exam is predictability and trust. Every one of my old exams are all the same, and the exam that's already sitting in exam 4 waiting for you is no different than any exam I've ever given before. So you might not like my exams, and that's okay, but you at least know what you're going to get, and there's no surprises. It'll be exactly like this. So the methodologies and strategies that we're talking about will position you for success on this exam as well. So if I were you, I would sketch out like this a couple more of those old exams, and I would work on writing up a couple of those rule statements that you want to put at the beginning of those sessions. How does child support work? How does parentage work? How does equitable distribution work? And then just organize and strategize. Those are my 2 key terms. I would not cram. I would not look at secondary sources. I would not even fully write out old exams. Just organize and strategize. All right, you guys, we're in this. You guys are awesome. You worked really hard. I'm going to stop our recording. All right, it's good to see you guys. I'll see you tomorrow, and I'll offer that con law thing after class tomorrow if anyone wants to come. See you later.